There is a moment at the very end of the first episode of Gravity Falls, after the adventure is over and the kids have gone up to bed, where Grunkle Stan looks around the empty gift shop to make sure nobody is watching, steps up to a vending machine full of chips, and punches a code into the buttons that swings the whole thing open like a door. Then he steps into the dark behind it and it closes after him. The show does not explain it. It just lets you sit with the strange little fact that the funny old man running the tourist trap has a hidden staircase built into his own building, and almost nobody watching that first night had any idea what they had just been shown. Tonight we are going through every single time that secret, and all the other secrets stacked underneath it, very nearly came out into the open. So get comfortable, turn the lights down low, we will be here a while, and if you have not subscribed yet, it honestly does help us keep making these. To understand what it means for Grunkle Stan to almost get caught, you first have to understand how much this man was actually hiding, because it is easy to watch the early episodes and assume he is just a grumpy, greedy old tourist trap owner with a fez and a cane and a bottomless appetite for other people's money. That is the version the show wants you to accept at first. That is the mask. And it is a good mask, because it is built out of real, true things. He really is greedy. He really does run scams. He really will sell you a bag of, in his own words, questionable meat. But the greed and the scams, as loud and as constant as they are, function almost like camouflage, because a man who is obviously cutting corners on ticket prices and merchandise is not a man you tend to suspect of anything larger. You watch him fleece a busload of tourists, and you file him away as a small-time crook, and that is exactly the size he wants you to think he is. The show, read one way, is running the same con on the audience that Stan is running on the town. What he was really hiding sat in layers, and it helps to lay them out before we start walking through the near misses, because every close call in this series is a threat to one specific layer, and they do not all carry the same weight. The outermost layer is the everyday con, the Mystery Shack itself, a building full of fake attractions and painted-up taxidermy that he charges admission to see. That layer gets threatened constantly, and it barely matters, because if a tourist figures out the jackalope is just a stuffed rabbit with antlers glued on, Stan loses one customer and shrugs. Underneath that sits the criminal past, the aliases and the bans and the fraud and the prison time, a whole history of a man who has been running from the law across state lines for decades. That layer is more dangerous, because it is the kind of thing that comes with handcuffs. And underneath even that, at the very bottom, sits the real secret, the one everything else exists to protect. There is a machine in the basement. There is a portal to another dimension humming away under the gift shop. And the man everyone in Gravity Falls calls Stanford Pines is not Stanford Pines at all. That is the load-bearing secret, and it is worth being precise about it now so that nothing gets muddled later, because the show itself keeps it hidden for a season and a half, and the confusion is deliberate. The man running the Mystery Shack, the great Uncle Dipper and Mabel are sent to spend their summer with, the one they and everyone else calls Grunkle Stan, is really named Stanley Pines. The real Stanford Pines, the one who built the portal, the one who wrote the journals that drive the entire mystery, is his identical twin brother. And for around 30 years, Stanley had been wearing his brother's name like a borrowed coat, living in his brother's house, running his brother's identity through the world, all while trying in secret to bring the real Stanford home. The word the series uses for the family relation is Grunkle, which is just a squashed-together way of saying great uncle. So keep that in your head as we go, because these two are the children's great uncles, not their grandfathers, and the distinction matters more than it sounds like it should. This is the part that reframes everything, and it is the reason I find this character so much richer than the grumpy old man reading gives him credit for. The lie was not built for profit. The 30 years of impersonation, the faked death, the hidden basement, the endless work on a machine that could tear a hole in the fabric of the universe, none of it was a scheme to get rich or to get away with something. It was a rescue. Stanley had accidentally sent his brother tumbling through that portal into some unknown elsewhere, and he spent the rest of his life, alone, lying to everyone he met in order to build the thing back up and pull him out again. So when we talk about every time Grunkle Stan almost got caught, we are really talking about every time a man in the middle of a decades-long rescue mission nearly had that mission exposed and shut down. That is the weight under the comedy. The stakes of him getting caught are not that he goes to jail. The stakes are that his brother stays lost forever. I want to set one more thing straight before we begin, because it shapes how you hear every close call in this list. The law never actually catches Stan for the big thing. Across the entire series, through federal agents and child psychics and his own suspicious grandkids, nobody ever pins the real crime on him in the way you would expect. When he finally does get arrested, and he does, it is not for identity fraud, and it is not for impersonating his own brother. It is for something almost sideways to the real secret. That gap between what he is guilty of and what he ever gets charged with is one of the quietly brilliant things about how this show is written, and we will come back to it at the end when it pays off. For now, just hold on to the shape of it. This is a man surrounded, for years, by people trying to figure him out, and the remarkable thing is not that he almost got caught so many times. The remarkable thing is how he kept slipping the hook. So let us go back to the beginning, to the very first thing the show ever shows you about him, because the near misses do not start in some late season reveal. They start in the pilot, in a scene most people forget is even there. The episode is called Tourist Trapped, and it premiered on June 15, 2012, the day Gravity Falls first went on the air. For most of its running time, it is a perfectly self-contained little adventure. Mabel gets a summer boyfriend who turns out to be a body made of gnomes stacked inside a coat. Dipper finds a mysterious journal with a six-fingered hand printed on the cover, and the two of them fight off the gnomes with a leaf blower and go home tired. It plays like a Monster of the Week opener, the kind of thing you could watch and enjoy and never suspect was carrying anything larger. And then, in the last handful of seconds, after the credits would normally roll on a lesser show, we get the scene from the cold open of tonight's video, the one I described at the start, where Stan slips behind the vending machine and vanishes downstairs. No dialogue explains it. No character reacts to it. The kids are asleep. It is staged purely for the audience, and even for the audience it is staged to be missed, because at that point, you have no framework to understand what a secret basement even means in this world. That is the first near miss, in a sense, though it is a near miss with the audience rather than with any character, and I think it is worth sitting with how bold a choice it was. The writers put the single biggest secret of the entire series into the final shot of the pilot, in plain view, and simply trusted that you would file it under harmless old man weirdness. They were betting on the same instinct Stan bets on with the townsfolk. Nobody suspects the buffoon. If you show people a ridiculous man doing a slightly strange thing, they will laugh at the ridiculousness and never interrogate the strangeness. And it worked. The reveal did not come until midway through the second season, and by the time it did, fans went back and realized the answer had been sitting in the last 5 seconds of the very first episode the whole time. The mechanism itself became one of the best-loved details in the whole series once fans got their hands on it. The entrance to the hidden laboratory is a vending machine standing in the gift shop, and it opens when you punch a specific code into its buttons, a sequence fans identified as the letter A, the letter B, the number 1, the letter C, the number 3. Think about the everyday audacity of that for a second. He built the door to the most dangerous secret in Oregon into a snack machine, in the room where he sells fez hats and bumper stickers to tourists, a machine that any customer could theoretically walk up to and start pressing buttons on. It is hidden by being the least hidden thing imaginable. A wall safe behind a painting would attract more suspicion than a broken-looking vending machine that never seems to actually dispense anything. This is Stan's whole philosophy of concealment, expressed as a piece of set design. The best place to hide something is somewhere so obvious and so beneath notice that looking directly at it feels like a waste of time. And once you know it is there, you start noticing how often Season 1 quietly returns to it. This becomes a recurring motif across those first 20 episodes. This pattern of an installment wrapping up its adventure, the kids going off to bed, and the camera lingering on Stan just long enough to catch him double-checking that the coast is clear before he heads down below. Every one of those tags is, in its own small way, a near miss, because every one of them is a moment where the machine is running and a curious child is one flight of stairs away from it. The show turns his secret into a kind of heartbeat under the floorboards of the series, always there, always thrumming, and the tension it generates is entirely invisible to you on a first watch, because you do not yet know to feel it. On a rewatch, those tags become almost unbearable. You know what is down there. You know what he is going back to work on, night after night, alone, while the two kids he is starting to love sleep upstairs with no idea. There is a real question buried in this, which is why Stan kept the kids so close to the secret at all. He could have shut the portal work down for the summer. He could have sent them somewhere else. Instead, he had two children about as naturally curious as any imaginable living directly on top of a hidden laboratory, and one of them carrying around a journal full of clues that pointed straight at it. Read generously, and I think Gravity Falls earns this reading by the end. Part of him wanted the company badly enough to take the risk, because 30 years is a long time to be the only person in the world who knows what you are really doing. Read less generously, he simply did not expect two 12-year-olds to be as relentless as they turned out to be. Either way, the decision to keep them near sets up nearly every close call that follows, because the person who comes closest to catching Stan, again and again across this series, is not the government and it is not a rival. It is Dipper, sleeping one floor up, with a journal in his hands and a hole in the story he cannot stop picking at. Which brings us to the second episode, and to one of the sharpest pieces of foreshadowing in the entire series, because the writers did not just hide the portal in the pilot. It hid Stan's real name in the second episode, printed on the back of his car, where anyone could read it if they only knew what they were looking at. The episode is The Legend of the Gobblewonker, and it sends the kids and Seuss off on a lake trip to hunt for a sea monster, while Stan does his own thing back at the shack. It is a fun, low-stakes half-hour on its surface, but somewhere in it, if you look at Stan's car, the license plate reads a string of letters that fans decoded as standing for Stanley Mobile. The plate spells out, in that compressed vanity plate way, the word Stanley. And at this point in the series, remember, the man is going by Stanford. Everyone calls him Stan, which reads as short for Stanford, and the show lets you assume that is what it is short for. So here is a piece of set dressing, present in the second episode, that flatly contradicts the name he is using, and it went right past almost everyone for well over a season. When the twin reveal finally landed, this was one of the details fans went back and found, and it recolored the whole thing. The lie had a crack in it from the second episode, and the crack was just sitting there in the parking lot, in plain daylight, the entire time. I love this because it tells you something about how the writers thought. This is not a show that came up with the twin twist late and then scrambled to justify it. The name was there from nearly the beginning, which means somebody in that writer's room knew, in the second episode, exactly who Stan really was, and was already leaving breadcrumbs. It also fits the character so perfectly. Of course the man kept his real name on his car. Stanley was proud, and stubborn, and lonely in a way that must have made even a hidden reference to his own erased identity feel like a small act of defiance. He gave up his name to the world and put it back on his bumper, where only he would know to read it. There is something almost unbearably sad about that once you understand it. A man driving around for 30 years with his true name on the back of the car, a private message to nobody, because there was nobody left who knew it was his. Gobblewonker also gives us one of the first real glimpses of the criminal past that forms the middle layer of Stan's secret, the layer between the everyday con and the portal. The episode references a previous family bonding day that the Pines had spent, and the activity Stan had chosen for it was making counterfeit $100 bills. The punchline is that this bonding day ended with Dipper and Mabel spending a night in county jail because of it, which the kids talk about the way you might mention a slightly embarrassing vacation. And this is the register the show uses for Stan's crimes for most of its run. It plays them as jokes, as absurd background texture. A man so casually and comprehensively a criminal that his idea of quality time with children involves federal currency fraud. You laugh and you move on, and you do not stop to add up how much genuine legal jeopardy is being casually referenced in these throwaway lines. But add it up and it gets serious fast, because counterfeiting is not a small crime, and it is far from the only one. This is the same man who pays for things, when he can get away with it, using what he calls Stan bucks, which are simply bills with his own face printed on them where a president should be. It is the same man whose backstory, once the show finally tells it, involves selling a long parade of faulty products under a rotating set of fake company names, a towel advertised to clean stains that made the stains worse, a bandage that gave people a rash, cheap knockoff products designed to take a customer's money and fall apart before they could complain. Each scam ran until the complaints and the angry mobs caught up with him, at which point he would fold the company, cross a state line, and start again under a new name. The running joke of the series is that this is why he ended up in Gravity Falls at all, a small, strange town in Oregon, far from everywhere, the kind of place a man on the run from most of the country might reasonably choose to disappear into. So think about what this means for the near-catch framework. Even before you get anywhere near the portal, Stan is a man for whom almost any serious scrutiny is dangerous, because there is so much there to find. He cannot afford a police officer taking a real interest in him. He cannot afford a journalist doing a profile. He cannot afford a background check. The Mystery Shack has to stay just successful enough to fund the work downstairs and just disreputable enough that nobody important bothers to look too hard. He is threading a needle every single day, running a business that has to be visible enough to make money and invisible enough to avoid attention. And the counterfeiting gag in the second episode is the first hint of just how many different ways this man could be brought down if the wrong person ever decided to pull on a thread. And here's the thing that gets me about the early season, the thing you only feel on a rewatch. None of the people around him are trying to catch him yet. The kids trust him, the town tolerates him. There is no investigation, no rival closing in. The tension in these early episodes is entirely structural, entirely dramatic irony, a pressure that exists only in the space between what the audience will eventually know and what the characters currently do not. Stan is walking around perfectly safe, and it is only us, watching later with the full picture, who can feel how thin the ice is under every ordinary afternoon. The show has not started actively threatening the secret yet. It is just showing you, patiently, exactly how much there is to lose. Before we get to the people who actively came after him, I want to spend a little time on the con that ran in broad daylight every single day, the Mystery Shack itself, because the shack is where you can watch Stan practice the exact skill that keeps the bigger secrets safe. The building is a tourist trap in the oldest sense of the phrase. It is a house dressed up as a museum of the paranormal, filled with attractions that are all, without exception, fake. There is a jackalope, which is a taxidermy rabbit with antlers attached. There is a creature called the Sasquatch. There are oddities and mysteries and wonders, and every single one of them is something Stan glued together in the back room to charge admission for. The whole enterprise is a machine for separating gullible tourists from their money, and Stan works it with the shameless confidence of a man who has been doing this his entire life. Now on its own, that is just a comedic premise, the greedy old showman and his fake museum. But watch what it actually trains him to do, and watch where the building sits. The Mystery Shack is the house that used to belong to the real Stanford. The portal is directly underneath it, which means the fake museum is not just a business, it is a cover story, an entire elaborate reason for a strange, isolated building in the woods to have odd noises coming from inside it. Unusual power draws, weird occurrences, tourists coming and going at all hours. If you are a man hiding an interdimensional machine in your basement, there is almost no better disguise for the building on top of it than a professional weirdness attraction, because now every strange thing about the property has a boring, profitable explanation. Is that a strange glow from the basement? That is just one of the exhibits. Did the lights flicker across town? Must be one of Mr. Mystery's stunts. The shack launders the actual paranormal activity of the portal into fake paranormal entertainment, and nobody thinks to question it, because Stan has spent years teaching the whole town that everything mysterious about him is a gimmick for money. That is the genius of it, and I do not think the show ever states it out loud, which is part of why I like pointing it out. The most honest thing in Gravity Falls hides inside the most dishonest business in Gravity Falls. There genuinely is something impossible and dangerous in that building, and Stan protects it by surrounding it with 100 fake impossible things, so that any real anomaly just looks like more of his nonsense. He has built a haystack of fake mysteries, specifically so that his one real mystery can be a needle nobody will ever bother to search for. And the day-to-day of running it is a constant performance of a version of himself. In the gift shop and on the tour, he is Mr. Mystery, loud and grandiose and completely committed to the bit, and that persona is itself a kind of armor, because a man performing that hard is a man you feel like you already understand. You watch him ham it up for a tour group and you think you have taken his measure. You have not. You have only met the character he plays for tourists, which sits on top of the character he plays for the town, which sits on top of Stanley, who almost nobody has met in 30 years. Every layer is a real performance, and every performance is designed to make you stop looking. When Dipper or Mabel catch him in some small lie about the exhibits, when a tourist calls out that the merchandise is junk, those are the little daily near misses that never threaten anything real, and I think they serve a purpose in the writing. They let Stan get caught constantly in small ways, which makes him read as a man whose secrets are all small. You see him exposed as a petty fraud so often that you stop imagining he could be hiding anything that is not petty. There is a character who lives inside this machine and never questions it, and that is Seuss, the shack's handyman, and he is worth mentioning here because he represents the kind of loyalty Stan's whole disguise depends on. Seuss works in the building on top of the portal for years, and he takes Stan completely at face value, sees the fake exhibits and the scams and the grumpiness, and loves the man anyway. That uncomplicated trust is part of the ecosystem that keeps Stan safe. He has surrounded himself, whether by luck or by design, with people who either do not look closely or love him too much to want to. The tourists do not look because they are only passing through. The town does not look because Stan has trained them to see a harmless huckster. Seuss does not look because Seuss's heart does not work that way. The only person in the building whose curiosity is genuinely dangerous is Dipper, and Dipper has a journal. So the Mystery Shack, read this way, is not a break from the secret keeping. It is the secret keeping, running 24 hours a day, dressed up as a gift shop. Every ticket Stan sells is a small reinforcement of the story that he is exactly what he appears to be, and nothing more. And that is the ground the whole rest of this video is built on. Because when the real threats do start to arrive, when a child psychic wants the building, and federal agents come sniffing around the town, and the kids find the vending machine, all of them have to get past a disguise Stan has been perfecting, in public, for decades. The performance is so total, so continuous, and so woven into a working business that catching him would require someone to disbelieve not just one lie, but the entire visible life he has constructed. That is a very hard thing to do, and the first person to seriously try was not an adult and not an authority. It was a child. This child rival is Gideon Gleeful, and he is one of the best antagonists the series ever built, precisely because he is a smaller, meaner mirror of Stan himself. Gideon runs a rival attraction in town, the Tent of Telepathy, where he performs as a child psychic, and just like Stan, his entire act is fake. He does not read minds. He wears a set of Gideon pins, little glittery brooches with his own face on them, and those pins are actually hidden cameras feeding him information about the townsfolk so he can pretend to know their secrets. So you have two showmen in one small town, both running a paranormal con on the same gullible population, and it was probably always going to bring them into conflict. But Gideon does not want to beat Stan at the tourist business. Gideon wants the Mystery Shack. He wants the building itself, and it takes a while for the story to reveal why, and the why is the dangerous part. Gideon has one of the journals. Specifically, he has gotten hold of the second journal, and he has read enough of it to understand that these books are not just a collection of monster sketches. He has grasped that they point towards something enormous, some source of power hidden in Gravity Falls, and he has worked out that the trail leads to the Mystery Shack. So when Gideon schemes to take the building, he is not doing it out of petty rivalry. He is doing it because he is closer to the truth than anyone else in town has gotten. He does not know about the portal specifically, not yet, but he knows there is a secret worth having under that roof, and he has decided he is going to own it. That makes his campaign against Stan the first genuine threat to the deepest layer of the secret, and it is coming from a child in a powder blue suit, which is exactly the kind of enemy Stan never planned for. The confrontation that matters most for our purposes is in the episode Dreamscaperers, which aired on July 12, 2013, near the end of the first season. The setup is that Gideon needs the combination to a safe. Inside the Mystery Shack, there is a safe, and inside that safe is the deed to the property, the legal document proving Stan owns the place. If Gideon can get that deed, he can take the shack legally. He tries to crack the safe directly, and Stan catches him at it and throws him out, completely confident, because as far as Stan is concerned, the combination is the safest thing in the world. It is not written down anywhere. It exists only in his own head, and that confidence is the vulnerability, because Gideon, having failed to open the safe with his hands, decides to go after the one place the combination lives. He decides to break into Stan's mind. This is where the journal turns dangerous, because in the second journal Gideon finds the means to summon Bill Cipher. Bill is a dream demon, a being from another plane who can enter a person's mind while they sleep, and Gideon calls him up and strikes a bargain to have Bill go into Stan's head, find the memory of the safe combination, and bring it back. And so we get this genuinely eerie sequence where Bill leads Gideon and, because they follow him in, Dipper and Mabel and Seuss, into the actual landscape of Stan's mind. They walk through his memories. And I want to be careful here, because this is the near miss that almost nobody frames as a near miss. But think about what is actually at stake. the most guarded thing in Stanley Pines' entire being is not the safe combination. It is everything else in that head. 30 years of who he really is, the brother he lost, the death he faked, the name he gave up, the machine downstairs, all of it lives in the same mind that Bill Cipher is now walking around inside with a small child. The show does not let them find the deep secret, and the way it protects it is one of my favorite small touches. When Bill hears the name Stan Pines, he perks up. There is a flicker of recognition, a sense that this name means something to him, and on a first watch it reads as nothing, just the demon being cryptic. On a rewatch it is enormous, because Bill has history with the Pines family that we do not learn about until much later, and this moment is the series telling you, under its breath, that the demon rooting around in Stan's memories is connected to the very secret those memories are hiding. But the plot mechanics keep everyone focused on the safe combination, a small target, and that small target is what saves Stan. Gideon is so fixated on the deed that he never thinks to go looking for anything bigger, and the kids are there to stop Bill rather than to investigate their great uncle, so the mind heist stays narrow. They are inside the vault and they only take the one thing they came for. The larger treasure is sitting right there in the dark, and nobody reaches for it. That is the pattern I want you to start noticing, because it repeats all the way through the series, and it is the real reason Stan keeps getting away. His enemies almost always want something smaller than the truth. Gideon wants a building. The agents, when they come, want to explain the town's weirdness. Even Dipper, for a long time, wants to identify the author of the journals without suspecting his own great uncle is standing between him and the answer. Stan's deepest secret survives, over and over, because the people closest to catching it are aimed at a different, lesser prize. And they get that prize, or fail to, and go home without ever realizing what they were standing next to. The mind heist in Dreamscaperers is the purest version of this. Somebody literally broke into his head, walked through his memories, and left with nothing but a safe combination, because a safe combination was all they knew to want. Gideon does get the combination, by the way. Bill delivers. The mind heist technically succeeds, but even that leads only to the deed, only to the building, only to the surface. And that near miss, the one where a demon strolled through a mind packed with 30 years of secrets and came out holding a house key, sets up the confrontation that ends the first season, where Gideon finally takes the shack and comes closer than anyone yet to the thing underneath it. That confrontation is the first season finale, Gideon Rises, and it is the closest anyone comes in the whole first season to the real secret, so it is worth walking through carefully. Gideon has the deed now. He has taken the mystery shack legally, thrown the Pines family out, and rebranded the building as his own. And in a scene with his father, Gideon lays out what he actually understands, and it is chilling to hear a child say it. He talks about the journals and how they combine to reveal a gateway to unimaginable power. He is not guessing anymore. He has assembled enough of the picture to know that the books point to a gateway, and he is standing on top of it, in the building he now owns, closer to Stan's portal than any enemy has ever been. If Gideon had been given a little more time, a little more of the puzzle, he would have found the vending machine and the elevator and the thing at the bottom of it, and the entire secret would have belonged to a power-hungry child. That is how thin the margin is in this finale. What saves Stan is not the portal secret. It is the smaller con turned back on the smaller con man. Stan and the kids expose Gideon's fake psychic act in front of the whole town, revealing that the Leel Gideon pins everyone wears are hidden cameras, that Gideon has been surveilling and manipulating the entire population of Gravity Falls to fuel his mind-reading act. The town, which had adored him, turns on him in an instant, and Gideon is arrested. And here is the beautiful, cynical symmetry of it. Stan defeats his rival by exposing exactly the kind of secret Stan himself is keeping, a performer running a fake supernatural act built on hidden deception. The difference is only in scale and in what is underneath. Gideon's fraud hid nothing but ambition. Stan's fraud hides a brother lost between worlds. But the town cannot see that distinction. As far as Gravity Falls is concerned, they just watched one showman take down another, and they never once turned that same skeptical eye back on the man who runs the Mystery Shack. Stan uses the town's capacity for outrage, spends it all on Gideon, and walks away with his own far larger secret completely intact. Then he gets the deed back, and this is where the finale hands him everything. With Gideon disgraced and arrested, Stan reclaims the Mystery Shack, And in the shuffle, he also gets his hands on the second journal, the one Gideon had been using. And this matters more than the building, because for the whole first season, Stan has been working the portal with an incomplete set of instructions. Now watch what he does the moment he is alone. He goes to the gift shop, he opens the vending machine, and he takes the elevator down, past the levels the show has only teased, all the way to the bottom. And there, in the underground laboratory, he brings the journals together. He has the first and the second now, and he retrieves the third, the one Dipper has been carrying all summer, and he sets all three open on a stand in front of the portal. The machine wakes up. Warning lights, a low-rising hum, the thing he has been rebuilding for 30 years finally coming back to life. The first season ends not on Stan getting caught, but on Stan, in secret, alone, at the bottom of his hidden lab, closer to success than he has ever been, with the whole town upstairs celebrating a completely different victory. I find that ending genuinely masterful as a piece of misdirection, and I want to name exactly why. The entire first season has been training you to watch this show as a story about Dipper and Mabel, and a journal full of monsters. The finale delivers a satisfying kids versus villain climax. Gideon exposed, the family home reclaimed, everybody safe. And then, in the last scene, it pulls the rug and shows you that the real story, the one that was actually happening the whole time, was Stan's. That the journal Dipper treasured was one of three. That the grumpy old man taking their side against Gideon had his own reasons for wanting that building back that had nothing to do with protecting his great-niece and nephew. The show lets you feel the warmth of a family reunited, and then, in the glow of the portal, quietly asks you to reconsider everything you thought this man was. It is the same trick as the vending machine in the pilot, but bigger, and now you have a season of investment riding on it. And notice again how nobody actually caught him. Gideon came the closest of anyone, close enough to name the gateway out loud, and he was brought down by his own fraud rather than by discovering Stan's. The town's attention was captured and spent on the wrong villain. Dipper and Mabel helped their great-uncle win back a building without ever suspecting what he intended to do in its basement the moment they went to sleep. The third journal, the object at the center of Dipper's entire summer, ended up in Stan's hands, and Dipper handed it over as part of saving the day, not knowing he was giving the last piece of the machine to the man rebuilding it. Every near miss in the season converges on this one scene, and the secret does not just survive it. The secret advances. Stan ends the first season further along in his impossible project than he began it, and he did it by letting a whole town believe he was the hero of a smaller story. The cost of all that success is loneliness, and this is the part the finale does not underline, but I think you can feel if you look for it. The moment of triumph, the portal roaring back to life, happens with no one watching. There is nobody to tell. There is nobody he can share it with. He has spent 30 years working toward this, and the night it finally starts to happen, he is standing alone in a concrete room under his house, while the people he cares about sleep upstairs, believing a comfortable lie about who he is. Getting away with it, over and over, is not a victory that comes with a celebration. It is a victory that comes with silence. And that silence is the price of never getting caught. A price the show will make him pay, in one form or another, right up until the very end. I want to step back now from any single episode and talk about the longest, slowest near miss in the whole series, the one that runs quietly underneath everything else, because it is not a scene or a confrontation, it is a search. From very early on, Dipper becomes obsessed with a single question. Who wrote the journals? Somebody out there cataloged every monster and mystery in Gravity Falls, signed the work with a six-fingered hand, and then vanished. And Dipper decides that finding this author is the biggest thing he can do with his summer. He hunts for the answer across the entire series, and the whole time, the answer is standing in the same house as him, cooking his meals and driving him around, and telling him to knock off the mystery nonsense. Dipper is looking for the author. The author's twin brother is his great-uncle. And that great-uncle knows exactly who wrote those books, and spends the whole series making sure Dipper never finds out. It is a near miss that never stops, and I think it is easy to overlook because it does not have a single dramatic beat you can point to. It is diffuse. It is 100 small deflections. Every time Dipper gets excited about a clue, Stan is there to pour cold water on it, to call the journals junk, to mock the idea that any of it means anything, to redirect the kids toward chores or the shack, or literally anything other than the trail that leads downstairs. On a first watch, this reads as ordinary, grumpy adult skepticism, the boring grown-up who does not believe in the magic the kids can see. On a rewatch, it is something much more deliberate. Stan is not a skeptic. Stan knows better than anyone alive that the monsters are real and the journals are accurate, because his brother wrote them and he has worked from them for 30 years. His dismissiveness is not disbelief, it is misdirection. He is actively steering his own great-nephew away from a secret that would blow the whole thing open, and he is doing it with the most disarming cover imaginable, the tired old man who just wants the kids to stop chasing ghosts. There is a real cruelty in it, if you want to see it that way, and also a real tenderness, and I think the series wants you to feel both at once. The cruelty is that Dipper aches for this. The search for the author is the sincerest thing the boy does all summer, a kid reaching for something bigger than himself, and Stan stands in the way of it at every turn. But the tenderness is that Stan is not protecting himself out of vanity. He is protecting a rescue mission that, if exposed, would be shut down by the very people trying to expose it, and he is protecting these two children from a truth that involves a dangerous machine, a lost man, and a demon none of them are ready to face. He lies to Dipper about the author for the same reason he lies about everything, because the truth is a door he cannot afford to have opened yet, not by a well-meaning 12-year-old, not by anyone. The whole time Dipper thinks the mystery is out there in the woods, the mystery is at the dinner table, passing him the syrup. And the house itself keeps nearly giving it away, because the building is full of the traces of the brother whose name Stan borrowed. There is an episode called Carpet Diem, the 16th episode of the first season, where the kids discover that the Mystery Shack has a hidden room they had never seen. A room with a strange carpet that turns out to swap the bodies of whoever scuffs their socks on it and touches. The body swapping is the plot, but the existence of that room is its own quiet clue. This is a house with hidden spaces, secret history built into its walls, and it belonged to somebody before it was ever a tourist trap. Fans point to a small moment in the middle of that episode, where amid the clutter Stan discreetly takes and pockets a pair of glasses that are later understood to be his brother's, a relic of the real Stanford left lying in the house. I would not state that as hard canon, because it lives more in careful fan reading than in anything the show spells out, but it fits the pattern exactly. The house is haunted, not by a ghost, but by the man who used to live there, and Stan is forever gathering up the evidence before anyone can ask why it is here. Think about what it must be like to live inside that. Every object in the Mystery Shack that predates the con is a piece of Stanford. The building is his. Some of the furniture is his. Somewhere in the walls is the life of the twin Stan is impersonating, and Stan cannot get rid of all of it, because some of it he needs, and some of it, I suspect, he cannot bear to throw away. So he lives in his brother's house wearing his brother's name, surrounded by his brother's things, and he spends his days making sure two curious children never pick up the wrong object and ask the wrong question. The near miss here is not a moment, it is a condition. It is the permanent low-grade danger of a man hiding a person inside a house that still remembers that person, with two young detectives living in the attic. What makes this the saddest thread in the whole run of near catches, and I mean sad in the way that stays with you, is that the thing Dipper is desperate to find is the thing that would give Stan the greatest relief to finally say. Imagine carrying the truth about your lost brother for 30 years with no one to tell, and then having a bright, relentless, journal-obsessed boy move into your house who wants nothing more than to uncover exactly that story, and having to lie to his face, again and again, to keep him from it. The one person actively hunting the truth is the one person Stan might have most wanted to share it with, and he cannot, not yet, because the machine is not ready and the world is not safe. So the search for the author becomes this long, aching, invisible near miss, a boy and his great uncle circling the same secret from opposite sides for 2 seasons, and it does not resolve until the machine finally opens and the author walks out of it himself. When the second season opens, the threat finally changes shape. For all of the first season, the danger to Stan came from inside the family, and from a child rival, people close to him, people he could read and manage. The second season premiere, an episode called Scary Oak that first aired on August 1st, 2014, brings in something Stan cannot charm or bribe his way past nearly as easily. The government shows up. 2 federal agents, Agent Powers and Agent Trigger, arrive in Gravity Falls because the town's strangeness has finally pinged on somebody's radar far away, and they start asking questions. And for the first time, the person poking at Stan's world is not a curious kid or a jealous performer. It is the exact kind of official scrutiny that a man with his record cannot survive. This is the nightmare scenario for someone in Stan's position. And it is worth remembering why, because we laid it out earlier. This is a man with a criminal history stretching across most of the country, a man living under his dead brother's name, a man with a stolen identity and a hidden laboratory. Federal agents are the one force in the world equipped to unravel all of it at once. A local sheriff might not think to run his fingerprints. A tourist would never check his birth records. But agents with federal resources, agents who can pull files and cross-reference names and dig into who this Stanford Pines really is, are precisely the people who could take the whole structure apart. So when Powers and Trigger show up, the stakes ratchet to their highest point yet, and Stan knows it, which is why he reacts the way he does. His strategy is pure Stan, and it is fascinating to watch because it is the same toolkit he uses on everyone, just pointed at a much harder target. He tries to steer them away from the town's real weirdness. He tries to bribe them, and crucially, he throws his own great-nephew under the bus to do it, waving away Dipper's warnings about genuine supernatural danger by telling the agents the boy just has an overactive imagination. Notice how much that small move contains. Dipper, this far into the series, is the one person consistently telling the truth about Gravity Falls, the one who actually knows the monsters are real, and Stan discredits him to the authorities in order to keep the heat off himself. It is a betrayal dressed up as protection, and it works in the moment, and it is the kind of thing Stan does throughout the series that you can read as either callous self-preservation or as a man desperately keeping dangerous people away from a child who does not understand what he is standing near. Probably it is both. Most of what Stan does is both. The irony of Scary Oak is that the real danger in the episode does not come from Stan's secret at all. It comes from Dipper. Trying to prove to the agents that the weirdness is real, Dipper ends up using the journal to accidentally raise an army of zombies, which turns the whole thing into a fight for survival. And in the chaos, the agents get a genuine taste of the town's strangeness. They survive it, barely, and they walk away not reassured but convinced. They decide that Gravity Falls is exactly the kind of anomaly they have been looking for, and they vow to escalate, to bring in more resources, to call in the big guns. So the premiere ends with the threat not defeated but deferred and enlarged. Stan wriggled through the immediate encounter, but he did it while the agents became more determined, not less, and that determination is going to come back around in the worst possible way later in the season. There is something I find especially clever about how the show handles the government thread, and it pays off much later, so I will only set it up now. The feds are built up across the season as this looming, methodical, uncatchable threat, the one force that could actually expose everything, and Gravity Falls lets that dread accumulate. And then, when it finally matters, the agents are neutralized not by Stan outsmarting them, but by the town's own weirdness swallowing them whole. Their memories get wiped. The very strangeness they came to investigate is what erases their ability to report on it. It is one of the great ironies of the series that the government agents who could have brought down Stan Pines are undone by the exact phenomenon they were sent to document, and they leave Gravity Falls with no memory of what they found. The feds do not catch Stan. Gravity Falls catches the feds. And that pattern, the town's weirdness protecting its biggest secret keeper by simply devouring anyone who looks too closely, is one of the deep structural jokes of the whole series. But in the moment, in that premiere, none of that is guaranteed, and I think the episode works so well as a near miss, because you can feel Stan's real fear underneath the comedy for maybe the first time. With Gideon, Stan was confident, almost enjoying himself, matching wits with a child. With the agents, there is a different quality to him. He is sweatier. He is more improvisational. He is a man who has just seen the one kind of trouble he has spent 3 decades avoiding walk right up to his front door, and he is scrambling. And the scrambling is funny, but it is also the closest we have come to seeing the fear that lives under the whole performance. Because Stan knows what these people are capable of. He knows his own file. He knows that if the right agent pulls the right thread, the rescue mission he has bled 30 years into gets shut down inside a week, and his brother stays lost forever. Every joke he cracks at those agents is a man juggling with the ground on fire under his feet, and pretending, as he always pretends, that everything is fine. And then we reach the episode where he actually gets caught. Not almost, caught. It is called Not What He Seems. It first aired on March 9, 2015, And it is, for my money, one of the best single episodes of television the series ever produced, because it takes every thread we have been following and pulls them all tight at once. This time the near miss stops being a near miss. This is where the secret, the criminal past, and the stolen identity all come apart in a single afternoon, and the remarkable thing about how it happens is that it does not happen the way any of the earlier threats set it up. It is not Gideon, it is not the government finding his file, it is the two children living in his house, finally following the thread all the way down. The episode begins with the federal agents returning, the escalation they promised back in the premiere finally arriving. They come to arrest Stan, and this is the detail I flagged at the very start of tonight, the detail that is so easy to miss and so perfect once you see it. They do not arrest him for identity fraud. They do not arrest him for impersonating his dead brother. They arrest him for stealing chemical waste, the drums of hazardous material he had been using to power the portal downstairs. That is the charge. After a lifetime of crimes, after decades of a stolen name, the thing that finally puts handcuffs on Stan Pines is the theft of the fuel for a machine nobody knows exists. The law reaches out and grabs him for a crime that is real, that he truly committed, and that points in exactly the wrong direction, because to the agents it looks like ordinary environmental theft, and they have no idea it is the visible edge of something enormous. Even in the act of catching him, they do not catch what he is. But the arrest is only half of the collapse, and it is the smaller half. While the agents are taking Stan away, Dipper and Mabel do the thing Stan has spent the entire series preventing. They get into the lab. They find the vending machine, they get through it, and they descend. And everything Stan has kept from them is suddenly right in front of their eyes. They find the journals he hid. They find the machine. And the show does something painful here, which is that it lets the kids interpret what they are seeing with no context and every reason to think the worst. Because from where Dipper and Mabel are standing, having just watched federal agents arrest their great-uncle for a real crime, the evidence looks damning. A man who lied about everything, who has a secret laboratory, who has been building a doomsday machine under their beds all summer. Dipper reads the situation as a betrayal, and honestly, based on what he can see, it is hard to blame him. What follows is a countdown, and it is the tensest sequence in the entire series. The portal is activating, the machine is building towards something, and the kids learn from the journals that this device, fully powered, could tear the universe apart. Stan breaks free and comes down to the lab, desperate, trying to reach the machine, and now the children truly do not know what he is. Is he a man about to destroy the world, or is he something else? They cannot tell. He is begging them to trust him, and he cannot explain why. Because the explanation is 30 years long, and there are seconds on the clock. And it comes down to a lever, an emergency shutdown, the one thing that can stop the countdown, and Mabel gets to it. This is the moment the whole series has been building toward without telling you, and I want to slow down for it because it is the emotional hinge of everything we have talked about tonight. Mabel is holding the lever that would shut the machine down. Dipper is screaming at her to pull it because everything they can see says this man is dangerous and the machine is going to kill everyone. And Stan, out of options, out of lies, with no time left to explain, looks at his great niece and asks her to trust him. Just trust him. And Mabel, who has every reason not to, who has just discovered that the great-uncle she loves has been lying to her all summer about the biggest thing in his life, looks at his face, and she lets go of the lever. She chooses to trust him. And the machine completes, and out of the light of the portal walks a man who looks exactly like Stan, wearing glasses, with an extra finger on each hand. Stanford, the real one, home at last, after 30 years. Consider what Mabel actually did there, because I think it is one of the most devastating character beats in the series. She did not trust Stan because she had evidence. Dipper had the evidence, and the evidence said pull the lever. Mabel trusted him because of who she is, because she chooses to believe in the people she loves, even when everything visible tells her not to, and the whole future of the universe turned on that one act of faith from a 12-year-old girl. The story frames the twins as two ways of meeting the same terrible uncertainty. Dipper is the one who trusts what he can verify, and everything he can verify says danger. Mabel is the one who trusts the person over the proof. And this once, in the single most important decision anyone in the family ever makes, Mabel's way is the one that saves everything. If she pulls that lever, Stanford stays lost forever, and the 30-year rescue dies 3 feet from the finish line. She lets go, and her great-uncle gets his brother back. So this is the strangest entry in a video about Stan almost getting caught. because this is the time he actually got caught, comprehensively, by everyone at once, and it is also the time it did not matter, because the person whose judgment counted most chose to trust him anyway. The agents caught his body, the kids caught his secret, and none of it stopped the thing he had been working toward, because in the end, the only lock on that machine that mattered was a child's decision to have faith in him, and she made it. Everything he built the lies to protect came true in the exact moment the lies fell apart. The portal opened, the brother came home, and Stan, who had spent 3 decades making sure no one ever saw the real him, finally got seen by the 2 kids and by the brother stepping out of the light, all in the same afternoon. The episode ends before anyone gets to process it. Ford is standing there. The kids are stunned. Stan is looking at the brother he has not seen in 30 years, the brother he punched through a portal by accident and spent his whole ruined life trying to reach. And the show cuts to black before a single question gets answered, because the answers need a whole episode of their own. And that episode is where we finally learn who these 2 men are, and how one of them ended up living the other's life, and it recolors every near miss we have talked about tonight. The episode that answers everything is called A Tale of Two Stans, and it is the one that turns this whole video from a list of clever tricks into something that aches. Because once you know the backstory, every near miss we have walked through stops being a caper and becomes a man protecting the worst day of his life. This is where the show finally tells you who Stanley Pines is, and how he came to be wearing his brother's name, and the story it tells is one of the saddest origin stories in any of these mystery box cartoons. So let me lay it out the way the episode does, because the shape of it matters. The 2 of them were born in the 1950s, in a town called Glass Shard Beach, New Jersey, and as boys they were inseparable, 2 identical brothers against the world. Stanford, the one who would become Ford, was born with 6 fingers on each hand, and as a kid that made him a target, something for other children to mock, and it was Stanley who defended him, Stanley who threw the punches, Stanley who stood between his brother and the cruelty. That is the foundation of everything. Before Stan was a con man, before he was anything else, he was his brother's protector, and the whole rest of his life is, in a way, a distorted continuation of that first job. Ford was the brilliant one, the one with the gift, and Stanley was the one who kept him safe, and both of them seemed content with that arrangement when they were small. Then came the thing that broke them apart, and it is such an ordinary, human, avoidable tragedy that it hurts. Ford built a science project, and it was good enough to attract the attention of a prestigious school, the kind of place that could launch a brilliant young man into the life he was meant for. And Stanley, on the night before it mattered, accidentally damaged it. Not out of malice. It reads much more like carelessness born of a boy who was scared of losing his brother to a future that did not include him. But the machine broke, the opportunity collapsed, and their father, a hard and unforgiving man, blamed Stanley for ruining Ford's shot, and he threw Stanley out, disowned him, told him not to come back until he had made something of himself. And just like that, the 2 inseparable brothers were split. One of them launched toward greatness, and the other cast out onto the road with nothing, carrying the guilt of having wrecked the person he loved most. That is the fork in the road that produces both men we know. Ford goes on to a university, graduates, and eventually finds his way to a strange little town in Oregon called Gravity Falls, drawn by its impossible concentration of anomalies. He settles there to study the weirdness, and he starts writing it all down in a series of journals, cataloging everything he finds, and with the help of a local mechanic named Fiddleford McGucket, he builds a machine, a portal meant to reach into other dimensions. Stanley, meanwhile, spends those same decades on the road, becoming exactly the man his father demanded he become, a self-made hustler, a salesman, a con artist scraping a living out of one scheme after another, chased from town to town, sleeping in his car, piling up the aliases and the bands and the enemies that make up the criminal past we talked about earlier. 2 brothers, 2 completely opposite lives, growing further and further apart, and neither of them happy. And then, in 1982, Ford calls for help, because the portal and the being he had been consulting to build it had turned on him. Ford had been getting guidance from a creature he trusted, and he came to understand, too late, that the creature was Bill Cipher, and that Bill's help was a trap, that the portal Ford had built could do something catastrophic. Frightened, cornered, out of people to turn to, Ford reaches for the one person who had always protected him. He calls Stanley. And Stanley comes. After all those years, after being disowned and cast out, he comes when his brother calls. But the reunion goes wrong. The years of resentment boil over, they fight, and in the struggle Ford ends up falling into the activated portal and is swept away into the unknown, and the machine breaks, and the door closes. And just like that, Stanley is standing alone in a basement, having lost his brother a second time, except this time not to a school, but to another dimension entirely. Everything after that, all 30 years of it, everything we have spent tonight watching him defend, grows out of that single terrible moment. Stanley did not become the Mystery Shack's Mr. Mystery out of ambition. He took his brother's name because he had nothing, no identity of his own worth keeping, a criminal record following him everywhere, and because taking Stanford's name meant he could stay in Stanford's house, keep the property, and keep working on the one thing that mattered, which was rebuilding the machine to bring his brother home. He faked his own death, the death of Stanley Pines, so that the wanted man could disappear and the respectable Stanford could go on existing. He let the world believe Stanley had died in a crash, and then he settled in to spend 3 decades pretending to be the very brother he had lost, running a fake museum to fund a secret rescue, alone with the guilt, telling no one, because there was no one who would understand and no one he could risk telling. Now go back through everything we talked about tonight with that in your ears. The vending machine from that very first episode is not a fun secret anymore. It is the door to a grief he has been managing for 30 years. The name on the license plate is not a cute little Easter egg. It is the last piece of a man he had to bury to keep going. The deflection of Dipper's search for the author is not obstruction for its own sake. It is a man unable to say, "I am looking for my brother too. I lost him. It was my fault. And I have been trying to fix it every night since." The fear on his face when the federal agents show up is the fear of a rescue mission being shut down at the 11th hour. Every single near miss in this video is Stanley Pines protecting the possibility of undoing the worst thing he ever did. That is what was under the fez the whole time. And this is the episode where the kids finally hear all of it, where Dipper and Mabel, who had just spent the previous episode terrified that their great-uncle was a monster, learn instead that he is something much more complicated and much more human, a man who lied to them out of a love so old and so wounded that it had curdled into 30 years of solitude. The reveal does not make him a hero exactly, and I think the writers are careful about that. He still lied, he still did dangerous things, he still, in that fight, lost his brother in the middle of trying to save him. But it reframes him completely, because now you understand that the greed and the grumpiness and the endless small cons were the scar tissue over a wound, and the wound was that he broke the one thing he ever cared about and spent his life trying to put it back together with his bare hands. The title tells you the whole thesis, if you think about it. A Tale of Two Stans. There were always 2 of them. The series spent that long opening stretch letting you believe there was one man, one grumpy old fraud, and the entire mystery was that a single family had been split in 2 by one bad night decades ago, and one brother had been living inside the other brother's life, waiting for the machine to finish, so there could be 2 of them again, instead of one man carrying both their names. Getting caught, for Stan, was never really about the law or the town or the agents. Getting caught meant someone finally seeing that there were 2 of them, and that the one standing in front of you was the one who was never supposed to be here alone. After all that wait, the series does something it is very good at, which is to take the gravest secret it has and, a couple of episodes later, mine the second layer, the criminal past, for pure comedy. The episode is called The Stanchurian Candidate, and it is the one where Stan's long list of crimes finally gets read out loud, in public, in front of the whole town, and it is one of the funniest and most revealing catalogs of everything this man has ever done. If you ever wanted a single scene that lays out just how much legal trouble Grunkle Stan is actually in, this is it, and it comes to us as a joke, which is exactly right, because by this point in the run you understand that the crimes are the small stuff. The real secret was never the crimes. The crimes are almost a relief to expose, because they hide the thing that actually matters. The premise is that Gravity Falls is holding an election for a new mayor, and Stan, being Stan, decides he wants the job, mostly for the power and the perks. And here comes the problem that has followed him his entire life. When you run for public office, people look into you. Somebody stands up and reads your record. And Stan's record, when they bring it out, is not a page. It is a stack of papers, described as being a foot thick, an absurd tower of documented transgressions, and an official begins reading them aloud to the crowd. The joke is in the sheer scale and variety of it, the way the list just keeps going and going, and the specific crimes are so gloriously strange that they tell you everything about the kind of life this man led on the road. We are talking about things like impersonating a dentist, stealing a golf cart, committing fraud at a bingo game, so-called woodpecker baiting, trafficking in pugs, and teaching a bear to drive a car. It is a portrait of a man who has committed every category of crime, from the serious to the deeply, cosmically petty, and never stopped. And the outcome is that he is disqualified. The town cannot elect a man with a record like that, and just like that, his political ambitions collapse under the weight of his own history. Now on the surface, this is a comedy runner, the crook who cannot win office because he is too obviously a crook. But look at what is actually happening underneath. Stan's criminal past, the middle layer of everything he hides, has just been read aloud to the entire town of Gravity Falls. Everyone now knows, on some level, that this man is a career criminal with a record a foot thick. And here is the fascinating thing, the thing that shows you how the whole series thinks about him. It does not matter. The town hears the entire list of his crimes, and they do not run him out of town. They do not call the authorities. They just decline to make him mayor and go on with their lives. His criminal past, the thing that could theoretically bring him down, turns out to be survivable precisely because it is so out in the open now. A secret is dangerous. A publicly known rap sheet is just a colorful reputation. This is the pattern of Stan's whole existence, expressed as one election. The dangerous things are the hidden things. The moment a crime becomes public knowledge, it loses most of its power to destroy him, because the destruction was always in the exposure, not in the crime itself. He spent his life running from town to town not because petty fraud is unsurvivable, but because being caught meant being pinned down, identified, connected to all the other things. Once his record is simply out there, read aloud and laughed at, it becomes part of the furniture. And the one crime that is not on that list, the one transgression the town does not know about, is the only one that ever actually mattered, and it is not on the papers because nobody alive knows to write it down. The stolen identity, the dead brother, the machine, the foot-thick stack is a decoy, in a sense. It is every crime except the one that counts. This is also the right place to talk about the rest of the criminal history the series scatters across its run, because Stanchurian is the episode that makes it text, but the pieces are everywhere. Stan is a man of many names. Across the series and its supplementary material, he is shown to have operated under a series of aliases. False identities he wore the way most people change coats. Names like Stetson Pinefield, Hal Forrester, and Steve Pinington, each one presumably a fresh start in a fresh town after the last con collapsed. Gravity Falls plays these as gags, a mugshot here, a fake name there, but string them together, and you get the outline of a man who has been so many different people that his real name, Stanley, had almost stopped meaning anything even before he gave it up for his brothers. There is something almost poetic in it. By the time he took Stanford's identity, he had already worn and discarded a dozen identities of his own. Becoming his brother was just the last and longest role in a lifetime of playing other people. The series also implies, through jokes and background details, that he has done real time, that he has been jailed more than once and in more than one place, and fan communities have compiled the references into a picture of a man banned from a large number of states, chased by mobs, locked up here and there across the country, and possibly beyond it. I want to be careful with the specifics here because a lot of the precise numbers you will see quoted, the exact count of states he is banned from, the exact number of times he has been imprisoned, the details of a foreign prison stint, come more from devoted fans piecing together on-screen glimpses than from any single clean statement the series makes. So rather than give you a false precision, let me give you the true shape of it. Stan is a man who cannot safely travel through much of his own country. He is a man who treats a routine traffic stop in the wrong state as a disaster. He is a man whose entire adult life, before the Mystery Shack, was a running fight with the law that he mostly lost, over and over, in small ways, town after town. That is the man who then decided to stop running, plant himself in one spot in Oregon, and hide the biggest thing of all in plain sight. He did not stop being a fugitive because he went straight. He stopped being a fugitive because he found something worth staying still for, even if staying still meant hiding forever. And that reframes even the comedy of Stanchurian. Because watch what Stan risked by running for mayor at all. He is a man whose safety depends on not being looked at too closely, and he voluntarily stepped into the one situation guaranteed to put his entire history under a spotlight. Why? Some of it is ego, sure, the showman wanting the biggest stage in town. But part of me reads it as the recklessness of a man who, by this stage in the series, has his brother back, has been seen by the kids, has already had his worst secret exposed and survived it, and is maybe, for the first time in 30 years, a little careless with the smaller secrets, because the big one is finally out. When you have already been caught for the thing that could have ended you, and the world kept turning, a foot-thick stack of golf cart thefts and bear driving charges starts to look like what it always was, a punchline. It is worth pausing on the fact that even after the enormous reveal, even after his brother is home and the kids know the truth, Stan does not stop being a small-time crook, because the con is not a means to an end for him. It is who he is. The everyday scamming continues right through the back half of the second season, and the show keeps giving us these little glimpses of Stan casually breaking the law in ordinary ways, long after the great secret has stopped being a secret. And I love these moments because they tell you that the con man was never a disguise he could simply take off. The lying and the hustling went bone deep decades ago. Even with nothing left to hide, he hustles because a lifetime on the road wired him that way. The clearest of these is in the episode The Last Mabelcorn, where, in the middle of a story about something else entirely, we catch Stan in the background dealing with a man named Santiago about smuggling barrels of pugs across the border. Remember the list from the election, the foot-thick stack of transgressions that included pug trafficking? Here it is, not as an old charge being read out, but as an active piece of business, happening in real time, in the background of a scene, as if it were nothing at all. That is the joke, and also the character. Stan never stopped. The reveal changed everything about how we understand his deepest motive, but it changed nothing about the man's day-to-day relationship with the law, which remains, let us say, flexible. He will smuggle a barrel of pugs on a Tuesday because the opportunity is there, and because that is simply how Stan Pines moves through the world. There is another episode, Roadside Attraction, where Stan takes the kids on a road trip that turns out to be partly an excuse to sabotage rival tourist traps, the other roadside oddity businesses that compete with the Mystery Shack. And this one is interesting because it shows you the competitive, almost professional pride underneath the scamming. Stan does not just run a con. He runs a con he is territorial about, a business he will actively undermine competitors to protect. The Mystery Shack is a fraud, yes, but it is his fraud, and he defends its patch of highway with the seriousness of a man defending a kingdom. And of course, on a rewatch, you understand why the shack matters so much to him beyond the money. It is his brother's house. It is the machine's cover. It is the one place in the world he stopped running to. Every rival tourist trap he sabotages is, in some small way, him protecting the thing that let him finally stand still. And then there are the countless tiny cover-ups, the daily lies, the moments across the series where Stan bends the truth to get out of trouble that has nothing to do with the big secret. He lies to cover the fact that he let Mabel's pet pig get taken in one episode. He lies about the exhibits. He lies about money, about the state of the shack, about his own past, reflexively, constantly, about things large and small. And most of these lies are never about the portal at all. They are just the ambient dishonesty of a man for whom the truth was never the default setting. And I think it is important to hold both of these stands in your head at the same time, because it would be easy, after the tragic backstory, to decide that Stan is secretly a good man whose lies were all noble. He is not. The backstory explains the biggest lie. It does not launder all the others. He really would sell you a bad product. He really would smuggle those pugs. He really would throw a rival business under the bus and enjoy it. The love and the grief are real, and so is the pettiness, and the story never asks you to pick one. That refusal to simplify him is, I think, the reason the character has lasted, and it connects directly to our theme, because a man who lies about everything, small and large, all the time, is a man whose one big lie can hide in plain sight among 1,000 little ones. This is the deep structural genius of building your most tragic secret into your most incorrigible liar. Nobody looks hard at any single one of Stan's lies, because Stan is always lying, about everything, so his dishonesty stops being information. When a man tells the truth 99 times and lies once, the lie stands out. When a man lies about the price of a keychain, the freshness of the snack bar hot dogs, the authenticity of the jackalope, and his own name, all in the same afternoon, the enormous lie underneath disappears into the noise of the small ones. His compulsive petty dishonesty is not a flaw in his cover. It is the cover. He hides the one lie that could destroy him inside a lifelong habit of lying about nothing in particular. So when we count the times Stan almost got caught, we should count these too, in a way, even though none of them are dramatic. Every ordinary day the Mystery Shack was open was a day some tourist could have demanded a refund loudly enough to draw attention, some competitor could have called an inspector, some smuggled pug could have gotten loose at the wrong moment. Stan lived his entire later life inside a low, constant hum of minor legal jeopardy, and he was so comfortable in it, so practiced at wriggling out of small trouble, that the practice itself is probably what kept him alive during the big trouble. 30 years of talking his way out of refunds and citations and angry customers is 30 years of training for the day a demon walks through your mind or a federal agent knocks on your door. The petty cons were his gym. By the time the real threats came, he had been rehearsing the escape for his whole life. Here is something the show does not spell out but that I find fascinating to think about, and I want to be clear this next stretch is more my reading than hard fact, so take it as interpretation rather than something the series states outright. When Ford comes back through the portal, the secret does not end. It changes shape and, in a way, it doubles. Because now there are two identical men in the same house, and only one of them officially exists. For 30 years, the danger was that someone would discover Stanford Pines was really Stanley. Now the danger is subtler and stranger. Now there are two Stanford-shaped men under one roof, and the town outside still believes, as it always has, that there is exactly one. The impersonation did not stop when the real man returned. It just acquired a second layer, because the real Stanford has been legally deadish and off the grid for 3 decades, and the man the town knows as Mr. Mystery is still wearing his identity. Think about the ordinary logistics of it. The town of Gravity Falls has known one man as Stanford Pines for 30 years, and that man is Stanley. So when the actual Stanford is walking around, what is he? He cannot exactly introduce himself under his own name because his own name is taken by his brother in this town in front of these people. The two of them now have to navigate a world where they are visually identical, and one of them has spent 3 decades building a public identity out of the other one's name. The series largely handles this by keeping Ford in the background, down in the lab, out of the public eye, focused on the larger supernatural threat gathering over the town. But every time the two of them are out together, every time someone from town might see them side by side, there is a fresh version of the old near catch, a new way the secret could unravel. Because two identical men is a very hard thing to explain in a small town where everyone knows everyone. And it goes deeper than logistics, into something almost philosophical about who Stan even is at this point, which I think is the richest thing about the back half of the series. Stan spent 30 years becoming Stanford, not just using the name, but living the life, running the house, being the man the town relied on to be weird and reliable in equal measure. In some real sense, the identity of Stanford Pines, as it exists in Gravity Falls, is something Stanley built. The real Ford was gone before most of these people ever arrived. So when Ford comes back, there is a low, painful question underneath every interaction between them, which is, whose name is it now? Ford invented it, was born to it, earned the degrees, and wrote the journals under it. But Stan lived it, wore it, made it mean something to an entire town, suffered for it, sacrificed for it. They are two men with one name and a lifetime of resentment between them, and the reunion is not the warm ending you might hope for. It is awkward and prickly and full of old wounds, because 30 years of guilt and abandonment do not dissolve the moment the portal opens. That friction between the brothers becomes its own kind of tension in the final stretch of the series, and it matters for our theme because the thing that finally threatens to expose Stan, in the largest possible sense, is not an outsider at all by the end. It is the truth of himself. For the whole series, getting caught meant an enemy discovering his secret. But once the secret is out to the people who matter, once Ford is home and the kids know everything, the last thing left to resolve is whether Stan can be seen and still be loved. Whether the man underneath all the identities is someone anyone would want once the performances stop. That is a different kind of exposure, and it is the one the finale is really about. Not will the agents catch him, not will the town find the lab, But will Stan let himself be known, fully, as the man who broke everything and spent his life trying to fix it? And will the people he loves choose him anyway when they see all of it? There is one more piece of this worth naming, because it becomes the hinge of the entire ending. Stan's lifelong impersonation of his brother, the thing that caused him so much loneliness and danger, the source of every near catch we have talked about, turns out to be the one skill in Gravity Falls that can actually save everyone when the worst thing imaginable arrives. He is the one man alive who can be Stanford Pines convincingly, because he has been doing it for 30 years. He knows how Ford stands, how Ford talks, how Ford would react, because he has spent 3 decades studying and inhabiting exactly that. The tragedy of his life, the stolen identity, the erased self, the years of pretending to be someone else, becomes, at the very end, the one weapon that can save the world. And that is such a beautiful piece of writing that I want to save the full weight of it for where it belongs, which is the end of everything, when Bill Cipher finally comes for Gravity Falls, and the twins turn Stan's greatest wound into the trap that kills a god. So we come to the end of everything, the 3-part finale called Weirdmageddon, which concludes in the series finale Take Back the Falls, that aired on February 15, 2016. By this point, the stakes have left the human scale entirely. Bill Cipher, the dream demon we first met all the way back in Dreamscaperers, the one who perked up at the name Stan Pines, has broken loose into the physical world and turned Gravity Falls into a nightmare kingdom, a bubble of pure chaos he cannot yet escape. And the reason he cannot escape, the one thing keeping this catastrophe local instead of global, comes down to a piece of information locked inside a human mind. Bill needs an equation, a formula that would let his weirdness spread past the borders of the town and consume the whole world. And the man who has that formula in his head is Ford. Look at the shape of that and tell me it does not rhyme with everything we have been talking about. The entire finale, the fate of the whole world, comes down to a secret locked inside a Pines twin's mind and a demon trying to get it out. It is the safe combination heist from the first season, blown up to the scale of the apocalypse. Once again, the treasure is a piece of knowledge inside a head. Once again, Bill Cipher is the thief. And once again, the way the family survives is not by being stronger than the threat, but by being trickier, by exploiting the one thing Bill can never quite account for, which is that these 2 men are identical, and one of them has spent his whole life pretending to be the other. Here is how the trap works, and it is the single most satisfying payoff of Stan's entire arc. Ford offers Bill a deal. He will let Bill into his mind, give him access to everything, if Bill will free the others. Bill agrees, because Bill wants what is in Ford's head more than anything. But the brothers have switched clothes. Stan is dressed as Ford, and Ford is dressed as Stan. So when Bill takes the deal and dives into the mind he believes belongs to the brilliant Stanford Pines, the author of the journals, the man with the formula, he is actually diving into the mind of Stanley, the con man, the fraud, the brother nobody ever took seriously. Bill walks into the wrong head, laughing, thinking he has won, and the door closes behind him. And this is the moment the tragedy of Stan's life turns into its meaning. Bill only falls for the swap because Stan is a perfect impersonation of Ford, and Stan is a perfect impersonation of Ford because he spent 30 lonely years becoming one. Every wound we have cataloged tonight, the stolen name, the erased self, the decades of pretending, the loneliness of being a man who could not be himself in his own home, all of it was, without anyone knowing, a lifetime of training for this exact instant. The thing that ruined his life is the thing that lets him save the world. There is a version of this story where Stan's impersonation is just a sad, criminal fact about him. The finale reveals it was a weapon he had been forging by accident for 30 years, and now, at the end, he gets to fire it. But the trap only springs if Stan pays for it. And this is where the series breaks your heart on purpose. With Bill trapped inside Stan's mind, Ford turns the memory gun on his brother. This is the device invented years ago, the one the Society of the Blind Eye used to wipe the town's memories, capable of erasing a mind completely. And when Ford fires it into Stan's head, it does not just destroy Bill, who is caught inside like a wasp in a sealed jar. It destroys everything else in there too. It erases Stan, all of it. The whole life we spent this video excavating, the brother, the guilt, the 30 years, the kids, the con, every memory that made Stanley Pines who he was, gone in a flash to kill a demon who was hiding inside them. Bill, in his last moments, realizes what is happening and begs. He offers Stan anything, riches, power, whatever he wants, if Stan will only stop. And Stan, who has spent his whole life wanting things, wanting money and respect and his brother back and to not be alone, looks at a being offering him everything, and he refuses, and he punches him, and they both go down into the white together. I need to stop and say plainly that this is one of the boldest character endings in any show aimed at children, because of what it asks Stan to sacrifice. Stan does not die. It would almost be easier if he died. Instead, he gives up his self, his memories, his entire interior life, the one thing that was ever truly his after he gave away his name. Think about it. He spent 30 years unable to be Stanley Pines to anyone. His name was gone, his history was hidden, his brother was lost, and the only place Stanley actually still existed was inside his own head, in his memories. That inner life was the last remaining piece of the real him, and the way he saves the world is by letting his brother erase that too. He gives up the final version of himself that still belonged to him. After a lifetime of losing his identity piece by piece, he chooses to lose the last of it on purpose, for everyone else. That is the deepest possible answer to a video about a man's secrets. In the end, he does not get caught. He surrenders the whole hidden self voluntarily, and it is the bravest thing he ever does. The series does not leave him erased, and I think that mercy is earned. After Bill is gone and the world is saved, Stan is left as a blank, a smiling old man who does not know his own family, and it is devastating to watch the kids realize the man who saved them does not remember them. But Mabel, whose faith saved the rescue once before at that lever, saves him again. This time not with a decision, but with love and patience. She brings out a scrapbook, the record of their summer together, all the photographs and moments the family shared, and she sits with him and walks him through it. And slowly, piece by piece, Stan's memories begin to return. The self that was erased to kill a god is rebuilt out of the love of the people he saved. And there is something perfect about the fact that the man who spent his life hiding is put back together by being shown, gently, exactly who he was, until he remembers. The cure for a lifetime of secrecy is finally being fully, warmly known. Bill, for the record, is left as a stone statue out in the forest, his physical form frozen at the moment of his defeat, and the 3 journals that drove the entire mystery are burned, so that the machinery of its secrets is dismantled along with its villain. I will note, carefully, that a book published years later, The Book of Bill, adds material about what became of the demon after all this. But that is outside the television story we have been following tonight, so I will leave it at the edge rather than fold it in as if the series itself said it. Within the series, Bill is stone, the journals are ash, the portal is gone, and the secret that started it all is finally, completely over. There is nothing left to hide. Before we close, I want to widen the lens a little, because Stan does not keep his secrets in a vacuum. He keeps them in Gravity Falls, and Gravity Falls, the more you look at it, is a town that runs on hidden things. Almost everyone of any importance in this place is concealing something, and Stan is not the exception. He is the emblem. Once you notice that, the whole series reveals itself as a study of secrets and the different ways people carry them, and Stan sits right at the center of it as the one who carries the heaviest one the longest. Think about the company he keeps in the concealment business. There is Gideon, the child showman whose entire supernatural act was a fraud run on hidden cameras, a boy hiding his ordinariness behind a manufactured legend, and we watch that secret get exposed and destroy him. There is the Society of the Blind Eye, a secret organization operating under the town for years, whose whole purpose was the concealment of the town's weirdness through the erasing of memories, a group dedicated to the industrial-scale hiding of the truth from the very people who lived it. Their memory-erasing device, invented back in 1982, is the same technology that ultimately destroys Bill, which means the town's machinery for hiding secrets becomes the machinery that ends its greatest threat. The tool built to make people forget saves the world by making one man forget. There is a symmetry there that I do not think is accidental. There is Old Man McGucket, the town kook, the babbling inventor everyone dismisses as harmless and crazy, who turns out to be Fiddleford McGucket, the brilliant engineer who helped Ford build the portal in the first place, and who was so traumatized by what he saw through it that he used that memory-erasing invention on himself, over and over, until he had erased his own mind into ruins. McGucket is Stan's dark mirror in a way the series never states, but clearly intends. Both men were connected to the portal. Both men lost themselves because of it. But where Stan hid his trauma behind a con and a stolen name, and kept his mind intact through 30 years of loneliness, McGucket hid his trauma by deleting it, erasing himself piece by piece until there was almost nothing left. Two ways of surviving the same wound. One man buries the truth, the other man burns it out of his own head, and it is McGucket's invention that Stan, at the very end, uses to do to himself what McGucket did to himself, which closes a circle across the whole series that I find almost unbearably neat. There are the Northwests, the town's founding family, whose wealth and status rest on a lie about the town's origins, a buried piece of history they have spent generations concealing to protect their name. There is Robbie, there is Pacifica learning her family is not what it pretends to be, there is Ford himself, whose journals are one long record of a man documenting secrets while keeping the biggest one, his deal with Bill, hidden even from the pages. Gravity Falls is wall-to-wall with people hiding who they really are, and the deep argument of Gravity Falls, read one way, is that a secret is a kind of weight, and that what defines a person is not whether they carry one, but what the weight does to them over time. Gideon's secret makes him cruel. McGucket's secret makes him mad. The Northwest's secret makes them cold. And Stan's secret, the heaviest of all, makes him, against all odds, kind. Buried under the greed and the grumbling, the thing 30 years of secret-keeping produced in Stan was a fierce, hidden tenderness, because the secret he was keeping was, at its root, an act of love. That is the distinction I keep coming back to, and it is why I think the series puts Stan at the middle of its web of liars rather than off to the side. Everyone in Gravity Falls is hiding something, but the content of the secret shapes the person. A man hiding his greed becomes greedier. A man hiding his fear becomes a wreck. But a man hiding his love, hiding 30 years of grief and guilt and devotion behind a mask of not caring about anyone, becomes something strange and rare. A person who has trained himself to seem heartless, precisely because his heart is the thing he cannot afford to show. Every gruff dismissal, every eye roll at the kids' adventures, every performance of not caring, was a lid on a feeling too big and too dangerous to let out. And the tragedy and the beauty of Stan is that he got so good at hiding the love that the people around him, and sometimes the audience, mistook the hiding for the truth. So when we ask why Stan never really got caught, why all those near misses stayed near misses until the very end, part of the answer is the misdirection and the buffoon act and the town's willful blindness, all the mechanical things we have talked about. But part of the answer, the deeper part, is that the thing he was hiding was so contrary to the man he appeared to be that nobody could imagine it. You cannot catch a secret you cannot conceive of. The town looked at Stan and saw a selfish old crook, so they never went looking for the selfless act underneath, because a selfless act was not in the character they had assigned him. His greatest disguise was not the fake name or the fake museum. It was the fake heartlessness. He hid a rescue mission inside a man everyone was sure would never rescue anyone but himself. And that, more than any vending machine, is why he got away with it for 30 years. Now that we have walked through all of them, I want to do the thing the title invites, which is to weigh them against each other and ask which time Stan actually came closest to losing everything, because they were not all equally near, and the answer is not the one you might guess. There is a real difference between a threat that looks dramatic and a threat that was actually, mechanically, one small step from ending him, and sorting them out tells you something about where the true danger in his life always lived. The federal agents feel like they should be the closest call, because they are the ones with the legal power to unravel the stolen identity, and because the show builds them up as this looming national threat. But look at how it actually played out, and the agents were never as close as they seemed. They were investigating the town's weirdness, not Stan's identity, and their attention was pointed at the supernatural, not the man. When they finally arrested him, they arrested him for the waste theft, which touches the machine but not the impersonation, and then the town's weirdness swallowed them and wiped their memories before they ever assembled the real picture. The agents were a loud threat and a shallow one. They had the power to catch him, but never the aim. They were looking in the right town and the wrong direction the entire time. Gideon's mind heist, back in the first season, was closer than it looks, and I think it is badly underrated as a near catch, because a being was inside Stan's actual mind, with the freedom to look at anything in there. That is as close to the core as anyone physically got until the very end. What saved Stan was not that his defenses held, it was that the intruders wanted something small. They came for a safe combination, and they left with a safe combination. And the 30-year secret sitting right beside it in the dark was never touched, because nobody thought to reach for it. That is a near catch decided by a hair, by the narrowness of an enemy's ambition. If Gideon had been curious instead of greedy, if he had told Bill to bring back everything interesting in there instead of one number, the whole series ends in the first season. It did not, because a small mind wanted a small prize. But the closest call, the one where he actually lost, is of course the day the kids found the lab. And here is the thing I want to land, because it reframes the whole idea of getting caught. The person who finally caught Stan was not an enemy. It was his own family. The two children he had kept close all summer, the ones he could have sent away and did not, followed the thread all the way down and saw everything. That is the deepest irony of his entire life. He spent 3 decades successfully hiding from the government, from rivals, from the whole watching world, and the only people who ever actually broke through were the 2 kids he loved, because they were the only ones he let close enough to do it. The distance that kept everyone else out was the same distance he could not bear to keep from them. He got caught by the exact thing he had been most starved for, which was people who cared enough to look. And that is why the moment at the lever matters so much, because it turns the catching into something other than a defeat. When his enemies almost caught him, the danger was exposure and ruin. When his family finally caught him, the danger was different. It was the risk that they would see the truth and turn away, that being known would mean being rejected. And instead, at the decisive moment, one of them chose to trust him anyway. So the closest Stan ever came to losing everything was also the moment he gained the thing he had been missing for 30 years, which was to be seen by someone and kept. The catching and the saving were the same event. He was found out and forgiven in the same breath, by the same person, holding the same lever. I find that this reorders the whole video in my head. All the clever escapes, the vending machine, the misdirection, the buffoon act, the 1,000 small lies. They kept the world out successfully, and the reward for keeping the world out successfully was loneliness. The one time his defenses truly failed, the one time somebody got all the way in, is the only time in 30 years he was not alone anymore. Getting caught, the thing he spent his whole life avoiding, turned out to be the thing that finally set him free. Not caught by the law, which would have destroyed him, but caught by love, which was the only force in the world that could break through a guard that good, and the only one that would not use what it found to hurt him. So if you ask me to name the time Grunkle Stan came closest to getting caught, the honest answer is that he did get caught, once, fully, at the end of a countdown in a basement, by 2 children who followed him into the dark. Everyone else only ever came close. Only his family reached him. And that, not any near miss, is the real story the show was telling under all the mystery and the ciphers and the monsters. The story of a man so good at not being caught that the only people who could ever catch him were the ones he finally, at the very end of a long and lonely life, allowed himself to love. What I love about how the series lets Stan's story actually end is that, after a lifetime of hiding, the show gives him the one thing the hiding always denied him, which is to be openly, publicly, uncomplicatedly loved. When the dust of the apocalypse settles and the town comes back to itself, the people of Gravity Falls do not learn that Mr. Mystery is a con man with a stolen name and a foot-thick criminal record. What they learn is that he is a hero, one of the people who saved them all from Bill. The man who spent 3 decades terrified of being seen gets, at the end, to be seen doing the best thing he ever did, and the town throws its arms around him for it. There is a deep kindness in that from the writers. They could have exposed him. They chose to let him be celebrated instead, and it lands as earned rather than convenient, because we spent 2 seasons learning what the celebration was actually costing him under the surface. And the identity question, the one that drove everything, resolves in the gentlest possible way, which is that Stan simply stops needing to be Stanford. With the real Ford home and the secret over inside the family, Stanley does not have to wear his brother's name as a shield anymore. He can just be Stan. The 2 brothers can be 2 people again, and that is the quiet undoing of the whole 30-year tragedy. The impersonation ends not with a dramatic unmasking in front of the town, but with a man being allowed, finally, to set down a name he had carried so long it had nearly crushed him. He does not need the disguise because he no longer needs to hide, and he no longer needs to hide because the thing he was hiding, the rescue, succeeded. The lie can end because it did its job. The Mystery Shack itself, the fake museum that was the engine of every scam and the cover for every secret, passes to Seuss, the handyman who loved the place and the man without ever needing to know what was underneath either of them. Seuss becomes the new Mr. Mystery, takes up the role, and keeps the strange little tourist trap running. And there is something perfect about that too, because the con outlives the con man, but it passes into the hands of someone who runs it out of love rather than desperation. The building that was a hiding place for 30 years becomes, in Seuss's hands, just a home and a business and a happy, weird place on the edge of the woods. The secret is gone, so the shack can finally be only what it always pretended to be, a place where people come to be delighted by mysteries. The disguise gets to become the truth. As for the two brothers, the series sends them off together in a way that closes the wound the whole story was built around. Stan and Ford, reconciled at last, having saved the world and rebuilt their bond in the doing of it, sail away together on a boat called the Stan-O-War II, its name carried over from the Stan-O-War they had fixed up and dreamed of sailing as boys, before everything went wrong, before the science project and the disowning and the 30 years of silence. As boys, they had dreamed of sailing the world together, hunting mysteries side by side, and life had taken that dream and smashed it against one bad night in a basement. And now, old men, at the end of everything, they get to finally go and do it. The two boys who were split apart by one accident get to sail off as the two brothers they were always supposed to be. It is the healing of the exact fracture that made Stan into a liar in the first place, and it means that the last image of the man is not of him hiding, but of him leaving to go explore the world openly, with his brother, with nothing left to conceal. I think about what that must feel like for a character like Stan, and the series lets you feel it without spelling it out. 30 years he could not tell anyone his real name. 30 years he sat in that house alone at night, working on the machine, unable to share the one thing that gave his life meaning with a single living soul. And then, in the span of one summer, he gets his brother back, gets caught and forgiven by the two kids he came to love, saves the world, has his own erased self restored by that same family's patience, and sails off into the open water a known man. Everything the secrecy took from him is handed back, not because he stopped being a flawed, gruff, dishonest old crook, but because the people around him finally saw the whole of him and decided the whole of him was worth keeping. That is the ending Gravity Falls gives to a lifetime of near catches. He does not get away clean. He gets something much better than getting away. He gets to stop running. And the kids, Dipper and Mabel, go home at the end of the summer changed, Dipper having turned 13, both of them having grown in the way summers make you grow, carrying with them the knowledge of who their great-uncle really was. The summer that started with them being dumped at a stranger's tourist trap ends with them having uncovered and helped resolve the deepest secret in the family, and having chosen, when it counted, to love the man at the center of it rather than to condemn him. In a show that is, underneath everything, about the way childhood ends and the way you have to let go of the people and the summers you love, Stan's story is the adult version of the same lesson. He spent his whole life refusing to let go of his brother, refusing to let the loss be final. And that refusal, which looked like a crime and a madness and a decades-long lie, turned out to be the truest kind of love there is. He would not let go, and in the end, he did not have to. There is one more layer to all of this that I think is worth pausing on before we close, and it lives outside the story, in how the series was actually made, because the concealment we have been talking about was not only Stan's, it was Alex Hirsch's too. Hirsch created Gravity Falls, and he did something as a performer that mirrors the whole theme of the series in a way that still makes me grin when I think about it. He voices Grunkle Stan. He also voices Bill Cipher, and Seuss, and Old Man McGucket. So the demon who tried to break into Stan's mind, the handyman who loves him, the mad inventor who is his dark mirror, and Stan himself are all, at the level of the voice coming out of the screen, the same person. The man telling you the secret and the men keeping it are one performer wearing different masks, which is about as pure a distillation of its ideas as you could ask for. Think about what that means for the near catches we have been tracing. When Bill Cipher perked up at the name Stan Pines in that first season Mind Heist, that was Hirsch, as the demon, reacting to a name that Hirsch, as the man, was hiding the truth of. The whole architecture of the reveal, the twin twist, the buried name on the license plate in the second episode, the vending machine tucked into the final shot of the pilot, was laid down deliberately by people who knew the ending from very early on and spent the better part of 2 seasons letting the audience underestimate a character exactly the way the town underestimated him. The series ran the same con on us that Stan ran on Gravity Falls, and it ran it on purpose. And the fact that it holds up so beautifully on a rewatch is the proof that the ending was always the plan and not a scramble. And this connects to the thing Gravity Falls is famous for beyond its story, which is its obsession with hidden codes. The writers buried ciphers everywhere, in the credits, in the corners of frames, messages written in substitution alphabets and number codes that fans learned to decode, an entire culture of viewers treating every episode as a puzzle box to be pried open. The vending machine code that fans identified, the letters and numbers that open the lab, is part of that same spirit, a piece of the series that rewards the audience for looking closer, for refusing to accept the surface. Gravity Falls trained its viewers to be detectives, to assume that everything meant something, that no detail was too small to matter, and then it hid its biggest emotional truth, the 2 brothers, in exactly the kind of small detail its own fans were primed to catch. The show taught you how to catch Stan, and then dared you to do it before the story did. Let me stay careful and neutral about the real-world side of this, because the point is the craft, not the people's private lives, which are not my business or yours. What is documented and worth saying plainly is that this was a tightly planned piece of work, that the creator built a mystery meant to be solved slowly, that he performed multiple sides of that mystery himself, and that the ending was seeded from the beginning with a discipline that most shows never manage. The near misses we have spent tonight walking through were not accidents of plotting. They were a mystery being paid out on a schedule, each one calibrated to bring the audience a little closer to a truth the writers were holding back for the exact right moment. When you watch Stan slip out of another close call, you are watching a magician who has already decided precisely when the trick will be revealed, controlling the pace of your understanding with total command. That is the last thing I find remarkable about this character and this show. The story of a man keeping a secret was told by a team keeping a secret in a series that taught its fans to hunt for secrets. And all 3 of those layers, the man, the makers, the audience, were playing the same game across 2 seasons. Stan almost got caught, over and over, by the people in his world. And the show almost let you catch it, over and over, by the clues on the screen. And in both cases, the near misses were the whole point, because a secret you can never get close to is boring. And a secret that is exposed too early is wasted. And the art of it, the thing Gravity Falls did better than almost anything else of its kind, was keeping you exactly 1 step behind for exactly as long as it took to break your heart with the answer. It is strange and a little lovely that a show about a summer tourist trap aimed at children, airing on a Disney Channel between 2012 and 2016, ended up telling a remarkably patient, grown-up story about guilt and love and secrecy, the kind television rarely produces. Gravity Falls only ran for 2 summers, 40 episodes, and it has never really left the culture since, because it did the rare thing of trusting its audience to be paying attention, to remember the vending machine, to notice the name on the car, to feel the weight of a secret long before the secret was explained. And at the center of all of it stands a grumpy old man in a fez who almost got caught 100 times and only truly got caught once, by the 2 children he loved, in the one way that ever mattered. I keep coming back to how gentle the show is with him in the end, after all those years of him bracing for exposure. It never punishes Stan for the hiding. It understands that the hiding was grief, and that grief is not a crime, and it lets him lay the whole burden down and sail off into open water with his brother beside him, a free man for the first time since he was young. That is a quiet mercy to give a con artist, and I think it is why so many people carry this character around in their hearts. We all have things we hide because they are too tender to show. Stan is the promise that being finally, fully seen does not have to mean being rejected. Sometimes it means being kept. So if you have been drifting off somewhere in the middle of all this, that is exactly what this was for, and I hope the story kept you warm on the way down. Rest well. Be kind to the people who see the parts of you that you try to keep hidden. And remember that the man everyone thought was a fraud turned out to be the one who loved the hardest of all. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.